In London, technology is the Silicon Roundabout. Introducing a new talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. Silicon Real. Each week, interviewing entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, financial technology, accelerators, and incubators in an exciting three-person format. Learn about the people behind the innovation. Locally filmed, locally sourced. Silicon Real. It's about the people. This is Silicon Real, the weekly talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. I am Brian Rose. I also host London Real. It's the same studio, but we have not just tech people here. We get politicians in, some rock stars, some authors, some filmmakers, some whistleblowers. It gets a little crazy.
Some professional athletes now.
Some professional athletes, yeah. We had an NBA guy in here recently. So check that out at londonreal.tv. But today we're here to talk tech. My co-host is Colin Pyle. You're running coffee companies. You got new blends. You're all around the world. You got financing. What's going on?
Yeah, busy times. So,
you make the coffee business sound just
so glamorous.
So glamorous.
I fly first class in all of these places. No, lie down beds. No, yeah, I think things are good, man. Just really busy. We're launching our new website tomorrow. So it's been a huge push to get that in place and launching new blends and yeah, it's just really busy. Some new staff starting next week as well. So just slowly growing and yeah, trying to be a success.
Scaling up. We could take the intros of each one of these shows and piece together like a documentary about the highs and lows of Crew Cafe.
One guy commented, he's like, you always seem to be coming out with new blends and traveling to Italy.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, when are you going to do stuff? So
we're
working on it.
That's a little feedback to you. So
it's hard.
All right, thanks for being here.
No, love it.
On with the show. Our guest today is Sandy Carter, who is Global General Manager at IBM, in charge of ecosystem development and social business Evangelism. You are a best-selling author and one of the key leaders responsible for setting the direction for IBM's social business initiative. I want to hear all about this. The NAFE named you a social media star, a woman of excellence. You worked at IBM for over 25 years after graduating from Harvard Business School. I think you hail from the great state of Texas. Is that true?
That's right. You got it.
We got to hear about that. Sandy, welcome to Silicon Real.
Thank you, Brian. It's such a pleasure to be here.
We were just so excited to hear that you were going to come. We usually have, it's the Silicon Roundabout. We usually talk about the startups in the community, the VCs, the journalists, and we've had recently some big companies, which was some great Series B rounds, 20, 30 million, dollars and pounds from companies like Dill. We had Nutmeg on here. There's a financial tech kind of trend going there. Yeah, Brandwatch, TransferWise, but we haven't had anyone that really talks to kind of those Fortune 500 companies and finds out what they're thinking, how they're using social. So many questions to ask you. I also don't know a lot about some of the stuff you're going to tell me, so I might have lots of questions. But if you could just tell us, how do larger companies engage in the social media space? It's something that we usually talk about consumers, and we don't usually think about the corporate engagement. How do they do it, and what have you learned, and what do you usually tell people?
Sure, that's a lot of questions. So let's see what we can do here. That means I could give you any answer. A lot of enterprise companies today are using social to better connect and engage with their clients. And so while they're using some of the consumer tools like a Twitter or a Facebook kind of tools, they're also creating their own communities that are more private networks, which we see as part of the new trend out there, right? Having a private network, sometimes invite only, sometimes just for an open dialogue, but it's on their terms versus on some other companies' terms. So we've really seen some great companies. In fact, I know that you hail, Colin, from the great country of Canada.
There we go.
There you go.
TD Bank, great example of leveraging social. They've done some amazing things inside their corporation to better engage their employees, creating communities where they can thank their employees for great service. And one of my favorite quotes is that a great company cannot have great customer engagement without great employee engagement. So folks like TD are using social to engage their employees, to get their employees empowered to shape the strategy and to help them go. So this WOW group at TD, they give all these great stories of great customer service. Their company then recognizes that legendary customer service They leverage that for training. They give awards to the employees, and they really then listen to what's really happening on the front lines to learn more. In fact, some of their advertising slogans have also come from that community where they've gotten that input coming in. So that's just one example of how a top enterprise would leverage or use social.
You know, you said you told a story where you were sitting on the tarmac in a plane, and you struck up a conversation with the CEO, and he said, we don't do social. And I think you were like, well, but it seems like that could be a lot of attitudes to an old school corporation, is we don't even want to engage. But you can't not engage. Is that right? That's
right. In fact, it's more dangerous not to engage than to engage. That same CEO that was sitting on the tarmac, actually while I was flying to Toronto again,
the world revolves around Toronto.
He was really funny because he thought that he could opt out of social. And the reason he wanted to opt out of social was he thought that that was the safer path, right? If I don't get out there, if I'm not publicly chatting, then people can't say anything bad about me. Where in reality, if you're not out there listening and you don't know what people are saying about you, you can't, engage in that dialogue. You don't understand what's happening. That very day that I was sitting next to the CEO, one of his competitors had posted this really funny YouTube video about him, and he was amazed. He's like, how could this happen? We opted out of social. So I had to explain, well, this is how social works. Right. And, he didn't get it. He was not a digital native, not a digital immigrant. He didn't get social. And so once I explained it to him, he did get it. He called his CMO, and actually we're doing business together now.
Yeah, because I read an article recently about talking about CEOs and actually CEOs having a social sort of profile. So not only the company engaging in social, but actually like an Elon Musk engaging in social and being able to cut through a lot of the red tape and, challenge arguments, or, he's pretty famous for doing it against certain articles written about, Tesla and stuff like that. But I thought it was really interesting, and I totally agree. And do you think it's a generational thing where a lot of the CEOs, the average age of a CEO may be at a point where they're just not comfortable with it?
I don't think it's age related, because while you do have digital natives, you have these digital immigrants, right? Like myself, sure, who, just fell in love with it and started leveraging it to engage with my clients and my partners. I think it really has to do with, are you transparent, and do you have a certain style about you that wants to listen to ideas and innovate with others, right? Combine that innovation and crowdsourcing, or are you more command and control, right? Like I met Elon, and he's amazing. Yeah. He is so innovative, but he listens, right? Sure. He likes to listen. He wants to hear other ideas. He's not threatened by someone who maybe disagrees with him, right? He debates you. Sure. So I think it really depends upon style, maybe more than age.
Agree.
You just published your 2014 business trends, tech trends report. Is that what's here, right?
Yes.
Okay, we've got a copy hot off the presses. What did you learn, or what did you realize things when they're going in social, or just the way that kind of the big corporates or the winning corporates are I guess, integrating or interacting with the rest of the community?
Yeah, I love this year's Business Tech Trend Study, because what we looked at is we looked at those pace setter companies. So again, we looked at 1,500 companies. They're not all big. They're startups. They're medium-sized companies. And what we wanted to know is those who are really excelling in the marketplace, who are pace setters, about 27% of those folks, what are they doing that's different than all the rest of the companies out there? What could we learn from them? And we learned 3 really interesting things. And the first one was my big aha, which was these pace setters are partnering in different and more creative ways. In fact, they're 2 to 3 times more likely to partner with a university to innovate for skills. They're 2 times more likely to partner with citizen developers. And they're also more likely to partner with different types of folks, not just in universities and citizen developers, but across the board, to use clients as part of that partnering community. So they're really looking at expanding their skill base through citizen developers, startups, universities, and really get that innovative power brought in. So if you think about it, today if you're developing an app, it has to be mobile, right? It have to have some social in it, has to have analytics in it. Where do you find folks who really know that space really well? Well, they're probably in university, or they're in startups, or they're out there in the citizen realm. And so the power of that, these pace setters have really harnessed in.
What is a citizen developer? How do you define that?
Yeah, great question. So a citizen developer could be a hobbyist, right? Someone who codes for fun. Could be someone who has a tech skill, but maybe doing something different, right? Like owning a coffee shop. It could be someone who is just really passionate about development, does it for their day job, but in the evening they want to do some coding for good. Like in the United States, we have a group called Code for America. We have all kinds of citizen developers there working on projects that help, the country out. So a citizen developer is really opening it up to any type of person who has technical skill. For instance, I'll give you an example. In Honolulu, Hawaii, which is, I know, in the United States, but I could use Lisbon or Sydney or many other cities as well. But I love the Honolulu story because they had all this great data, and they opened it up to their citizens to develop apps. They created an app platform, happens to be on IBM's cloud, but that app platform then enabled these citizens to write apps. And let me give you some of the cool apps they did. They did one called Da Bus, and it really is called Da Bus. I'm not just stumbling over my words. And it's just a simple bus schedule. When's the bus going to be on time? When is it going to be late? They went on to also do a tsunami warning system. So they had community leaders. They created a community, checked the siren, And in fact, it's so good that Japan now wants to leverage that tsunami. Now, think about that. This tsunami system was written by a citizen developer. They created an app called TripIt so that local Hawaiians could provide walking trails for those folks coming as tourists to the city. It's been so successful that Honolulu will now expand it. Similar things have been done in Stuttgart in Germany, who also leads in the space of using citizen developers. In fact, University of Stuttgart opened this up to students, and they developed, really interesting apps. So one of my favorites, which is actually going to turn into a startup, they developed an app for the iPhone where if it snows, it will automatically adjust your alarm. So 30 minutes early if it's snowing. You can put in your normal route to work or to school, automatically adjust if there's traffic on the route. So they're anticipating different things that could impact you and making your life easier.
And how did London score in this report, or what can you learn about our city?
Yeah, it was really interesting. And in London, the interesting thing was we found that partnering with universities was one of the lower scores. So UK and London had one of the lower scores. Germany, pretty high. United States, pretty high. And we had a roundtable today, actually, down in Shoreditch to kind of discuss this. Why don't we see more partnering with universities, with startups? Now, I know there are some, because today I met some that, actually sit in a university campus. But overall, we saw, even a lot of the research that's done here in London or England with the schools, that research actually ends up in startups in New York City or in Silicon Valley.
When was the last time we talked about a university here in London? I mean, seriously, 60 episodes, and sure. I mean, I have to say, anecdotal evidence for you, but we don't talk about the student that came from LSE or any of that, those kind of things. So
yeah, I guess Sherry is quite involved, and she lives in Cambridge, Sherry Kutu. And,
Sherry Kutu, yeah. So, Cambridge is a different story, but I think in London,
exactly, yeah.
So you just found there wasn't that engagement.
There wasn't, and today when we had our roundtable, we had a group of 25 influencers from London together. Universities, startups, app developers, some entrepreneurial groups as well. We kind of were brainstorming, does it start with the way that London, I guess the country maybe, does education? Where you select a major early on, when you're 16, you kind of stay in that major and you don't share, you're kind of siloed. So does it start there, and therefore you don't get a lot of sharing that's done with companies? Does it have to do with IP? We just kind of batted it around. I also understand, I think this week, a startup manifesto was released here too, and they called out the same thing, that we needed to do more here in London to partner with universities. So one of the things that we suggested is NYU in the United States, they're doing a really interesting program to engage companies with universities, we thought we might bring over some of the folks from NYU, who've been partnering with IBM as well, with some of the universities here in London and just have a dialogue and see if we could share some best practices. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
It's interesting to hear that the research in London goes to New York and, the Valley, which is, and we're always, of course, talking about the Valley and New York here because, they are the major competitors. They're leading the way. So we're always comparing ourselves. But this is kind of interesting to hear, surprising to hear. But also some of the major tech centers in the States, they were spawned from the universities. There's no, Valley from Stanford and all the different peaks, Austin, all of those things. But London is, the capital, the financial capital, the government capital. But how many schools are really here?
Yeah, I think I always thought universities would be so cool if they had, like an incubator accelerator program for after you graduate to help foster their own students. And I work pretty closely with where I went to graduate school at Holt, and in less of a tech way, but they're always interested in what I'm up to and how they can help me in some way. And so I think, it's a huge, as a big customer, as a startup, is so important. But then also having, universities help foster people's ideas coming straight out of school.
Yeah, I mean, even if you think about NYU, which is in, New York City is pretty, financial district, marketing district, pretty similar to London, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that they're doing, which I love, is they're, one of the classes, so the students actually get grades for it, is they form student teams, and then the student teams work with multiple companies, enterprise companies, startup companies. They get little projects, citizen developers, if you would, right, from a university setting. And those, as I talked to NYU, that program is always sold out. The students who participate in it are really valued because they've had some real world experience, but also the investment banks, the digital agencies that exist there, they get so much value too, because these are the kids who are using mobile and social, and they understand, the next generation and the market. So everybody wins in that scenario. So I'd love to have something like that happen here in London as well.
Yeah, my school did something like where we had like an action project, and so we spent a few months where every week we would meet with the CEO of a company and try to help them out with whatever problem they may be having. But I think it's not done nearly enough.
And is it done on the tech side? I mean, we had 25 of your key influencers today, and there was only 2 out of 25 who said that they were experimenting with it, and one guy actually came in from Cambridge, so he was the guy from Cambridge.
Yeah.
And we had 3 folks from Ireland, and they also said they were going to take that back to Dublin to see if they could try to get something, initiated and started around that area.
Yeah, I mean, look at our data set of 60 episodes. We haven't even mentioned a university name that often, let alone talked about what they're giving to the startups or how they're influencing. So, okay, that's good. Put that on the list. What else did we learn in this report, or what else kind of stuck out?
Another big aha was analytics. So analytics was viewed as being a core way that companies make better decisions. And these pace setters not just used analytics, but they embedded analytics into their decision-making process. And that it didn't matter if they were a Fortune 500 company or a startup. Even the startups that were considered pace setters were users of analytic data, not just gut feel. They trusted their data. They had the analytics, the predictive capability to use and leverage the data for advantage. In fact, one partner here, Red Ant, I don't know if you guys have talked to them.
No.
They won the Watson Challenge with IBM. And part of their competitive advantage is they have embedded analytics into their entire solution for retail. So while we do have great examples like Red Ant or even Monetize here in London who are doing this, one of the big gaps we found was that companies in the UK, so this wasn't London, but UK, aren't using analytics as much as other countries. In fact, fall a little bit behind Germany, Asia, and the United States. So I found that also interesting. And in our roundtable today, we discussed perhaps it's not trusting data. Perhaps it's a cultural thing that, people in London are very creative and they go with their gut feel, maybe more than data. So I'd be curious, what do you guys think?
I'm not surprised to hear that. I don't know. I mean, it is a cultural thing. I mean, when you think of Germans, you think about precision engineering and getting everything exactly right. I don't know. In the UK, it's interesting, and maybe it has something to do that we're not next to these universities. I don't know. I'm listening to this book called In the Plex right now, which is the whole story of Google, and they were always about the numbers, but they were PhD students, so it just was part of the culture from the very beginning. I don't know. It's a good question, but I'm not surprised to hear it. What do you think?
I think data, is part of the DNA of a company. I don't think you can do data for one area and not data for another. So I'm surprised to hear that startups aren't using data, because I feel like that's just something you implement. And we've had guys on the show, Ometria and Go Squared, and it's super easy now to get good data. To get good data that you can understand, Google Analytics, So I'm surprised at startups. I can see maybe, a larger company that's not in the tech space maybe wouldn't have data because they've always made decisions on relationships.
So I'm wondering if it has to do with skills, to really be great at analytics, not just having data, but use analytics. You have to have really good quality data scientists, but you also have to have good storytellers, right? So if you think about it, if you just do the math and science piece, and you've got that math and science piece down, and you've got the analytics, you've got to tell a story with it to take it forward to your board or to your CEO. And I'm just wondering, again, back to the training, given it's more silo-based and not broad-based, is that maybe inhibiting the use of analytics? Or is it a trend in startups? So where we got, like we have Red Ant, we have Monetize who are using it, and others, using Watson Analytics and other tools. Is it maybe some of more established companies?
Yeah, I think the skill is for sure. I think it does take a dedicated person within sort of a company, even if it's a relatively small company, because again, it's in your DNA. So making decisions on a bit of data is probably a negative impact. You have to sort of make a story, right? And look at it from a bird's eye view and put together the data that matters, and then action, decisions based on your board or your CEO to actually use that data to make decisions. So
I think you need an analytic mind too. I mean, I think the CEO has to be either proven that way or been thinking that way. Because startups have been in London for hundreds of years, whether it's a merchant ship going off to get spices, but if you're not used to making decisions by the numbers.
And trust the data. It's like a GPS. You either trust it or you don't.
Or you don't.
In the middle, it doesn't work.
It's true. It's very true.
Sandy, you travel all over the world. What does it feel when you get to the London tech sector? What do you hear about London when you're in the States? Is it part of the conversation? Is it not? Is there certain sectors where people are like, okay, we're taking notice? I just want to get your general feel, and you won't offend us.
Yeah, I've now traveled to 82 countries, which I love because I get to experience so many different cultures and see, the energy and the excitement that the startups have. I would say, if I had to really call out 5 centers that I think are really top of mind for me for startups, of course, it would be Silicon Valley. It would be hot.
India. The Valley in San Francisco, are you putting those into one?
I would, because San Francisco now is hotter than Silicon Valley, depending upon where you lean. Yeah, I was just out in San Fran. We did an event out there, and yes, absolutely. I see a lot of startups in New York City. In fact, I see a lot of push from New York City to take away kind of the crown from Silicon Valley with some of the new tax breaks from the state and from the city in New York. So I see a lot of excitement there. Israel. Right. So Tel Aviv, amazing. Just amazing technology. India, lots of amazing startups there. In fact, we did we have something called a Global Entrepreneur Program to help startups. We did a hackathon there, a mobile hackathon. We had 200,000 people sign up.
Whereabouts are you finding that in India mostly?
Well, actually, Delhi has a lot. Mumbai. Chennai, kind of spread. Those three are probably the 3 biggies, Mumbai, of course, for more financial applications. Delhi, more government, obviously. But the energy and the excitement is just amazing there. And then the 5th one I would say is London. I spent the morning today down in Shoreditch, walking around the square and talking to lots of startups down there, lots of energy, lots of excitement. And the word is out with what you guys are doing around entrepreneurs here. It seems like there is a renewed energy, I would say in the last maybe 2 years, that I had not seen coming from an entrepreneur attitude out of London.
Yeah, no, that's what we're seeing as well. We're kind of feeling it. Like I said, we're seeing those Series B rounds. We're seeing the government get very well involved. Even if it's photo ops, at least they're involved and they're talking about it. And, it's a unique capital. There's some real fintech stars here that I think will, take over. But, we had Debu in here a couple weeks ago, former Google employee, and he's looking for the fintech company that will be the next Google, right. Something of that scale. And he thinks we need a network effect, which I think we have here. A lot of support, government supporting. The banks are, 1 mile away.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing. The innovator's dilemma comes up all the time, Sandy. We talk about it in all the companies I just listed. It's the banks versus the new one coming up. It seems like your job is all about the innovator's dilemma. I mean, it seems like you're trying to teach people not to fall into these traps, to see if they can engineer their way around it. What do you think when you hear that term? I know it's a simplistic term, but when you hear it, what do you think? And what do you tell people?
Well, it's really interesting because if you look at, even the study we just did, the BizTech study, the word innovation actually never came up. But every one of the aha moments leads to innovation, right? Analytics leads to new innovative projects, maybe a new innovative market that you didn't know about before. If you think about partnering in a new way, if you're partnering with startups or with a university or citizen developers, it's leading you into a new market. It's providing with new skills, providing with the innovation. Even, working with the technology, which was one of the pieces of the study, all of that's about innovation. So I think that today innovation is almost assumed, like people have to have innovation to be successful, whether you're a big company or a small company. And that's one of the reasons why I love my job right now. I get to focus on entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. We have an entrepreneur program, and we do Smart Camps. So we help these young entrepreneurs focus on innovation. We provide business mentoring, technology mentoring, connection to VCs to help them through that innovator's dilemma, to get them over the hump when they just have a great idea. There's so much more, right, than just a great product. You need a company. You need to be an entrepreneur, not just an inventor. And so that's part of what I'm focusing on today, is how to really encourage, help to grow, because it's easy to start a company, it's hard to grow a company. So really helping these companies not just get started, but helping them to grow and to take their innovation to the next level.
And you're working with these entrepreneurs on the front lines. What do you see, and what's changed in the last couple of years? Are you seeing kind of a new breed? Are they well-versed? Do they know all the terminology better? Or what are you seeing, and what do you want to see more of?
Yeah, it's really funny. We call it kind of like and I don't know if you guys watch Shark Tank here, but like the Shark Tank phenomena. Is it popular here?
We know of it.
You know of it, okay.
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban, yeah.
So, but break it down briefly for people that haven't seen it. What do they do?
So on Shark Tank, it's kind of like a VC on steroids. These 4 or 5 entrepreneurs, millionaires and billionaires, listen to pitches. Companies come in and they pitch their idea, and then on the spot, these guys fund the company. And they take an equity position or a royalty position in the companies. It is right now the most watched TV show in America.
Wow.
It's now going to go on 5 nights a week, not just 1 night a week. And it is the #1 watched show by teenagers between 13 and 18. So more than all the, the vampire, werewolf, zombie shows out there is the Shark Tank. So it's really this Shark Tank phenomena that we're seeing from entrepreneurs all over. Even today at our, we had a session at Shoreditch with startups. People not as much pitching, but sharing their idea and their thoughts, asking for help. Really motivated to take what they're doing, not just as a product, but to take it to market. I think a couple years ago, you asked me some of the differences, people would come in with a better mousetrap. Now I think entrepreneurs are getting that it's not just a better mousetrap, but it's how do you take that to market, right? What are the elements to make it successful? You got to have sales, and what do you need to think about? Because, the best product doesn't always win, right? It's all the elements that surround the great idea that helps it to be successful.
Do you think this Shark Tank phenomena will start conditioning young adults to just be ready to pitch all the time?
Absolutely. In fact, I have 2 daughters. And the other day, my one daughter, she came in and she's like, Mom, I've got a great idea. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And I was folding laundry or something. She goes, sit down. And she almost did like Shark Tank style, pitched me her great idea for, something really cool that she wants to sell at school.
Yeah.
And I thought, she would never have done that a couple years ago. She's got the bug, that startup bug that I think is so phenomenal. Because, if you think about an entrepreneur just doesn't happen. They kind of grow up, right? You have to get into the life cycle of the entrepreneur. So, part of my job, I told you, is the startups, but I also have the academic program. So we actually start trying to reach potential entrepreneurs in high school. And then we take that all the way up, because you can become an entrepreneur at 50, right? I mean, there's no age that you can't become an entrepreneur. So it's really that whole mindset. I think that you grow up as an entrepreneur, you think that way, and then you become an entrepreneur, hopefully one day.
I love now is it's relatively cheap to get an idea or even a product, right? You can make your own product at home and sell it on Etsy, or do all these sorts of things. I think as a young kid to explore and learn and be an entrepreneur and try and fail is such a great opportunity.
Absolutely. And with the cloud technology out there, we have something called Bluemix, and you can get out there and try it for free.
Right.
Build your application, test it, which is the new entrepreneur, right? You're going to build, lean startup, right, style. You get out there, you build something quick, you find out people like it, you design it, and then you move on and you develop and move and go. I love that, kind of fast sprints as your lean startup grows, and that's what kids can do too.
Yeah, that's great.
Talk to me about IBM and their own innovator's dilemma. I mean, IBM has been around for a long time. You were the makers of hardware, in the 60s and 70s, the only makers of hardware. And then Microsoft came along, and you had a famous, kind of semi-battle with them. And you've seen come and go all of these innovators along the way. And you've been there for a long time. How does a company...
Not that long.
Yeah,
I'm not that old. Come on, Brian.
I'm talking to startups like 2 years in. But I'm just fascinated. I remember reading a book called Big Blues, and it was all about the fight between Microsoft and IBM in the 80s. And I mean, you're at this company, and you're still enacting change. How does it work when you're steering a ship that moves slowly, or does it move slowly? What is the IBM like today? I don't know.
I think IBM today is, and it just continues to transform. And I think today, especially with the new transformational leadership, we're moving really fast. We're really big, so you might not see it as fast as we feel it. But the movement to cloud with Bluemix, it's an incredible cloud platform. Just tens of thousands of developers are coming over to it, transforming the way we do business. If you think about the shift in analytics, the shift that we're seeing across the board, IBM really has set into motion some more big transformations. And just as we've done in the past, we've been around for 102 years. You have to transform, right? I mean, if you're a startup, you're going to start, and when you're successful, you grow. But you can't stay the same. You always have to change. And that's why, when people say to me, wow, you've been with IBM for 25 years, I have, but it's been almost like working for multiple different companies, multiple different roles, because we constantly change to stay on top of the game.
And is it difficult getting a message out there with lots of other corporates getting into the space? We joke on the show sometimes, like, not another incubator, because all these corporates seem to come to London and launch an incubator. It's almost getting a little crazy because there's so many of those. Right. Is it hard to compete when every corporate wants to get into this entrepreneur space?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard with share of voice, but I think the real secret, if you would, is going to be around the engagement. I really think, part of the transformation, focusing with entrepreneurs, focusing with developers, making sure we've got that university piece in. I think it's going to be about that engagement. So I think the awareness and things that typically would come from advertising is good, but I think the better thing is directly engaging as we go along. And for me, that's how you break through the noise, right? I mean, look at your show. The way that you guys are successful is not that you're advertising things. You're engaging your audience. You're telling a story. You've got a value prop. And that's really the same strategy that IBM is using, is we're engaging the audience at the right place at the right time. If you think about entrepreneurs, even in the study, entrepreneurs and developers are very influential. And what startups do, enterprise wants to do. In fact, if you talk to VCs, they'll tell you they're overrun today with Fortune 500 companies. They all want to see what the startups are doing. And if the startups are using Ruby on Rails or Python, they want to use Ruby on Rails and Python. So there's a lot of, influence there. So as IBM transforms and we work with the entrepreneurs to make them successful, that engagement will just breed success as well.
And the pace setters are contacting these startups and engaging with them on their own. They're not waiting until they have to buy them as a capitulation. They're going out and engaging.
That's right. And partnering in numbers that we've never seen before. So, I think it's an interesting time for startups now where, startups used to say, well, Sandy, help me get a call with an enterprise customer, right? I want to be in a Fortune 500, a Fortune 100 company. But today, I think the power really sits a lot with startups, and they should use and leverage that power. These Fortune 500 companies want to innovate. Back to your innovator's dilemma, they want to innovate. They see the innovation power in a startup, and so they're hungry for that. So I wouldn't, not go into an enterprise or a Fortune 100, 500 company. I'd be empowered to go there and to take that plunge, because I think that's what those Fortune 500 companies are looking for. And just like IBM learns from entrepreneurs, like we run a lot of smart camps, and these are camps where we bring in entrepreneurs to pitch to us, right? And then we select the best, and we have a global entrepreneur of the year. We learn as those entrepreneurs come in. So for instance, this year, we're seeing that a lot of entrepreneurs and startups are entering around Internet of Things. And not just Internet of Things like it used to be around sensors, but more around how you use the data and how you use the analytics. Back to that analytics term, how you analyze the data that you're getting from the shirt that you're wearing or the Fitbit that you have on, or, the more B2B examples as well. How do you leverage and use that data and those analytics? So we're learning. Those startups are coming in. They're getting funded. That's giving us more insight into the market and giving us the ability to innovate.
You're speaking tomorrow at a conference. What are you going to be trying to tell those people? Or what is your goal for the next year if you get a win? Is it getting these people to make some real changes in their businesses?
Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to be talking about the different trends, but we're going to be talking to about 200 entrepreneurs and showing them, again, some of the core things that are going on that they can make money with, how they can improve their businesses and make money. Success over the next year, I believe, is that entrepreneurs and startups see the value of working with IBM, and that IBM isn't this, big, old, slow company, that we're fast moving, that we have a great platform called Bluemix that they can develop on, and that we have programs like this Global Entrepreneur Program that can help them with business mentoring, technology mentoring, and connection with the VCs. That's that breaking through the noise that you talked about earlier, that we break through that noise with that great engagement that we want to do at a very local level.
That's important.
Where does that take place, the entrepreneur sort of accelerate, that you have? Yeah,
so we actually have here in London, we have over at level 39. We have an innovation center that's up 24/7, and you can go there as a startup and get help on the technology and business side. We also have a partnership with Shoreditch, the Village Hall, over here in a set of buildings for startups. And then we also run smart camps, and we run those all over the world. So we do about 78 of those. In fact, I just met with a smart camp runner from here in London, and we do those, and then we host a global entrepreneur event. But we offer support for entrepreneurs throughout the year through this entrepreneur program, so they can get mentoring. Think about IBM. I mean, we've acquired a lot of startups, right? I mean, a lot of startups. It's part of our strategy is acquisition. And all those startups were entrepreneurs. And so we have a breadth of great skill that we use to leverage and mentor these entrepreneurs. And I think that value really shows through. And we do that globally. We had a partner in Africa called Modi. And they had this 5-year plan. They wanted to go to 2 countries in 5 years. They were growing rapidly in Africa. And they joined our program, and we were able, because we're a global company, we were able to connect them up with different markets. They went to opened 6 new markets for them, new countries, in the first year of their business. So we accelerated their business plan from 5 years down to a year and got them in 6 countries instead of 5. So that's kind of the power of, working with a program like that. And I know we have one as well as others as well that startups can join.
You know, we're talking lately a lot about women in tech, and you were probably one of the original women in tech. I'm guessing there weren't that many women around. So
back when they had covered wagons, probably not.
So maybe not that bad. But I'm curious, because you must have a perspective that other people don't, that have been maybe around for 5 years or 10 years, and they're like, okay, this is the women's in tech. But you've seen a trend, you know, going probably in different ways. Well, what's your read when you hear it talked about? How have you dealt about it through your career? Tell me.
Well, you know, we've seen a lot of progress, a lot more women in tech, but not enough women in tech, I would argue. And I would say that one of our particular focus areas are women entrepreneurs. I don't know about London, but I would say globally around the world, we don't have enough women startups and we don't have enough women entrepreneurs. So we in particular do some extra programs and extra things for women entrepreneurs. And we actually start early. You know, I talked about this Shark Tank phenomena that's happening. We're actually starting earlier and earlier. So if you look at the numbers, it's really quite dismal for young girls in schools today who are taking tech classes, who one day could start, you know, a tech startup or other startups. The numbers have actually declined.
As in lower,
did you know that?
Lower numbers of girls taking coding classes?
Yeah,
really?
Coding, yes, it's been declining. In fact, I would tell you, believe it or not, per capita, there are actually more girls in tech today in Cuba. That means, you know, young girls in high school that really want to focus on math and computer science in Cuba per capita than London or the United States. It's really an issue. So in fact...
Why the decline, do you think?
You know, as we've talked to some younger girls, they think that it's, you know, if you're going to code or if you're going to be a startup, you're going to be like working in a basement and there's going to be no light and you're going to be, you know, it's not going to be fun. Also, there's still permeation of, you know, boys teasing girls when they're good at math or science. And so, in fact, one of my daughters got into an advanced math class and she's like, I can't do that because no boys will talk to me ever, right? At that teenage
year. Until she
That's
IPOs.
Really important. That's right. Exactly. That's right. So we're actually starting earlier. There's a group called Girls Who Code, and we've done a lot of work with them as well as a lot of other tech companies. Twitter's been a big sponsor of them. Lots of startups are sponsoring them because we all see this dilemma that's coming, that there isn't going to be enough diversity. Because a lot of startups, I mean, well, actually, think about a startup. There's probably not a startup that doesn't need technology in some form or fashion, right? And so we do see this as an impact as we move forward. So while we've seen at some of the levels that there are more women in tech, not enough women entrepreneurs, not enough young girls filling that pipeline. So we've done lots of things to try to, you know, to try to encourage that. And I'd love for London to engage in that as well. You know, Girls Who Code is one effort. We do something called Excite Camps where we take girls in the summer for a week and we show them all the opportunities that exist with, you know, different types of startup opportunities that they could go and the importance of technology and what that might be as they grow up. So when we do that around the world as well to really encourage young girls to grow up in this area. But I do, you know, even today when we had 25 people at our roundtable, only two.
Shame on you, London.
Were women. And so, yeah, I do think we need to do some more encouragement here as well. How many women do you interview here? A lot?
We're on quite of a run lately, aren't we?
I think probably a quarter of our guests, maybe a third of our guests are women.
Probably a quarter.
Yeah.
We're on a bit of a run lately. It's something that's definitely talked about here. I don't feel like there's much of a stigma. We had Claire from Code Club here, which really encourages, you know, younger people to code. And there are definitely some efforts where they're really pushing that and getting women involved too. But I don't know how we compare. You know, I don't know how we compare to the Valley and here.
Yeah, I don't know either. You know, it seems, you know, you go to sort of networking events around tech and it seems it's definitely male sort of heavy, but it doesn't seem that outrageous. And I definitely think there's an emphasis on it in London. There's people are aware of it and they're, you know, trying to encourage not only girls but also women, right? It's just because you're in your 30s. Right. You know, we always say easy at Google. They have mothers in sort of tech thing in them.
They have like a Tuesday. It's mothers in tech, and they can come in and get hours and
Don't have to be 13 start to code. You can be 35 and have 2 kids and start to code.
That's true. Well, and then I love the event I'm going to tomorrow, Entrepreneur Country with Julie Meyer. I mean, she is a VC. She runs Entrepreneur Country. She's a great role model here in London. for folks who are looking to do this, and I know has a lot of efforts around women in tech as well.
Yeah. I'll ask you a question. What advice do you have for some people leaving university? We've always talked about it because we spent some time in banking, and we're always thinking maybe you should go to a large company and spend some time there, learn the ropes before you think about going somewhere else. We've also bumped into the 21-year-old that's like, I'm a startup entrepreneur, and you're like, are you? And so I was curious. We get into grumpy old man mode sometimes. Yeah, exactly. But I was curious what you think. You've seen the corporate side. Do you think it's important to, say, go out of college and spend a few years at an IBM or a big company and then go your separate way? What are your thoughts?
I see, if you're thinking about starting a company, anybody can start a company. I think when you look at companies that reach that growth and scale, they all look for some experience. So I think it's really advisable if you get some experience at a company. It doesn't have to be as big as an IBM, but I do think it's important to get some of that experience, because I think then when you come up with that great idea and you have your startup, you've got that scalability in mind and you know how to scale your company. So you're not going to be one of those startups that comes in and you're the founder, but then when you start to grow, an external CEO comes in and takes your place, right? We've all seen that happen before. So I do believe that if you get some of that experience, I even think business school, you said you came here for business school. Yeah. I think business school is a great, another training ground, right? It gets you inundated to lots of different case studies, and you don't have to live through all the hardships, but you learn from those hardships. I think those things are really valuable for entrepreneurs.
Now, you went from Duke, you went straight to business school. Is that right?
I did. Well, Harvard doesn't allow you to go straight. I'm required to work for a year. So I worked for a year at IBM, and then I went on to Harvard.
Okay. Was there a rush to get in there? Did you really want to get the business school aspect?
I did. And if I had to do over again, I would have probably worked for longer. Because I think a lot of the lessons, I was pretty naive about it. And Harvard typically likes to take you after 5 years. They don't really actually accept many people right out of school. And so I thought it was a really cool thing. I was going to work for a year and go. But if I had it to do over again, I would have worked for 5 and then gone back. The problem is just inertia, right? Will you really do it once you work for 5 years?
Once you get on that treadmill. Yeah. I had quite a bit of experience, and I feel, I could really take a case study and take what I learned in class and reflect it on my own experience, which was very helpful in understanding things and how to improve.
I almost went straight to the Sloan School of Business after my undergrad. And I remember when you're 21, 22, you don't want to hear to wait. Everyone's like, they're like, go spend 2 years on Wall Street. Like, 2 years.
Exactly.
And like, you don't want to, you don't want to.
I need my, my fancy car, and you're so materialistic at that age, I find. Yeah. And so immediately you just want to, let's get school out of here, or, and get the big paycheck.
Yeah, but to you, you're in this undergraduate mode where you're like, oh, it's just another year of learning. But I think the business school degree is really a reflection on the mistakes you've made, and then really applying that, I should have done that instead. And I don't think you have that experience.
I agree. I would say wait if you can.
Yeah, okay, to anyone listening, there you go. Sandy, we ask everyone on the show a few questions at the end. I'm going to hit you with those. If you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Sandy Carter and give that young lady a bit of advice, what would you tell her?
Wow, that's a good question. I would say, first I would say, don't go straight away to business school, because that's what I did. Don't buy that red sports car right away. Wait for a little while. I think the other thing that I would say is, to be more confident right away, not cocky. I don't mean cocky, but I mean more confident in your ideas. When you're younger, sometimes you think that you have a great idea, and then someone says, no, that's not right. You kind of back down because you think, wow, they've got like 5 years of experience, and you don't. But I think sometimes when you're coming at something with a brand new, fresh approach, that if you really push, the majority's not always right, and you need to have more confidence with your ideas. That would be one of the things that I would say, is really go out on that limb and push and take more risk.
Do you see this with the entrepreneurs or with your daughters, or is this you seeing yourself in the past?
Yeah, the other thing that it is we. I was reading a couple books about successful leaders, right? And one of the things almost all of them said, which I thought was interesting, was that they wish they had taken more risk earlier on, that they had to learn to take risks, they had to become more confident in themselves. And as I look back and really think about it, I think there might have been some risks that I would have taken that may have accelerated some of the things I wanted to do more quickly. And that doesn't mean take an uncalculated risk or, when you are wrong, admitting that you're wrong. You need to do that. But sometimes there's really not a right or a wrong. There's multiple ways to approach something. And sometimes just that extra push can get you over the line.
We hear this a lot, don't we?
Do you really?
Yeah. We hear a lot of people saying, make those mistakes and take those chances when you're young. A lot of times before you have the overhead of the family, and and in retrospect, you really could have done anything at that point. Unfortunately, when you're there, sometimes it feels like your next decision is the biggest decision of your life.
But I do believe, even though I would have waited on going to business school, I would actually repeat that. I really think that was very helpful to me. And going to a business school that taught case study, I really like that a lot too. Not repeating the, lectures, but really doing cases and having real companies come in. If I had to give myself advice, it would be repeat that, go back to business school, take that shot, because I do think that has really enhanced my career. It gave me a great, strong group of people to network with. We actually have a Harvard reunion coming up. There's some incredible folks who've done incredible things, and I still know them. We learn from each other. And I just think it was an invaluable experience that I would not want to trade.
Yeah, that's a special place. I mean, they're known for that case study mentality. I've heard the network is just one of the most valuable thing about Harvard. Maybe it isn't the most, but
one of the most for sure. Yeah, and I do think that would maybe the other piece of advice I would give people is to spend more time on networking and relationships. Sometimes when you're young, you're like, well, I've just got to get this piece of work done, or I got to do that. But what you learn when you get older is that those relationships were the most valuable thing, right? Not necessarily I killed that project, or I did that great presentation, or I won that client, but it was the relationships that you develop with the client. It was the relationship you develop with your peers that turns out to be the most important thing.
I was telling a young guy that working at one of the YouTube multi-channel networks here in London, and I told him the same thing, that I said, all those people around you, you're going to be doing business with a large percent of them for the next 20 years. And he just had this glazed look in his eye. He was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I got to go to this other startup. And I was like, no, really, you're going to bump back into them, and they're going to have new companies, and then you might work for them, you might hire them. Like, all this is going to change. And they're like...
I don't know, the world seems big, but it can get really, really small.
It's true, right? It really is.
Especially within a certain industry or a certain city. It's amazing how many people you bump into, even just around here. Or I'm in coffee and I still bump into people I've seen before in the tech space. Or just never burn a bridge, and always think about fostering relationships.
Yeah.
Just to finish up the advice questions, best advice you've ever received. Could be business, could be personal.
Best advice I've ever received. I would say the best advice I ever received would be that your family is most important, and to prioritize your family. And I think that, especially if you're really driven, I'm very driven, I'm very type A, it's very easy, to get engaged and involved in doing your work. I love my customers, I love what I do, and then to not give the right priority to your children. I have 2 daughters, and your family. I have a husband, and my extended family and friends. And I think that was probably the best advice someone gave me was, make sure you're doing the care and feeding them, because one day that will be what you have left, right? And it does, people tell you when you have kids, they're like, it goes by like this. And you're like, yeah, right, I've got these kids for like forever, right? But now I've got a daughter that's 16, I can't believe it. And it goes by so fast. So those moments are so important. So one piece of advice I got in making sure that you make that real was bringing your kids with you on business trips. And I know some people think, oh, that's just crazy. But it's done a couple things for my daughters. I brought one of my daughters to a conference called Blog Her. It's the largest women's blogging conference in the world. It helped us to bond. It helped her to see me in a work environment. But it also, she actually won her blogging contest at school. And she said she was motivated by seeing these businesses started by these women that were just bloggers. My other daughter, I took out to California with me. This is the unfortunate thing, is that now she wants to go live in California. But I took her out to Silicon Valley and San Francisco, where all the startup things were happening. And she felt the energy. She caught the bug. And so now, not only did she get to go with me, I got to spend time with her, but she saw, why I was so excited about working with entrepreneurs and startups, and now she wants to be one. And so a lot of people will say, you know, especially the school system, don't take your kids out of school. They're going to miss 3 days. Or, you know, it's unprofessional for you to take your child with you. Especially being a woman, that's just the worst thing. But everywhere I've taken my kids to conferences or even to clients, I asked permission to take my daughters to clients. They've really embraced it. It's been great for my kids, and really a lot of the people around me have started doing the same thing. So I think it's great. You should really think about it and consider it.
Powerful. Yeah. Probably makes a great impression on the client too, right?
No, it's true. I don't know, back where, you know, in Toronto, you have you take your kid to school day, but it's like one day every year where you would go to, you know, your dad or your uncle or your mom's, you know, office. But it's like, you know, to do that more often, I think that's phenomenal. And especially in your field is so relevant to, you know, you have a really cool job.
Yeah, so I do. And to get them, you know, it's like, you know, they've traveled to London. One of my daughters have come to, I mean, they've traveled internationally. So they don't just have they're not U.S. centric. They have a global perspective on the world. They don't just think about school. They think about, you know, work someday. I think it really is motivating to them. Yeah, so I would encourage people to do that as well.
Do you think the tech sector is getting better about separating work time from personal time? Do you think they're going that way, or is it always no? Okay.
I don't. I think it's just all mushed together, right?
Okay.
And I actually like it better. I think it gives you more flexibility. I have my phone with me. I happen to be an iPhone user. You know, I can get to everything I need. I can do FaceTime on my phone. I can do meetings. I can get to what I need to do. And therefore, it gives me time to go to my daughter's volleyball game, right? Because I'm not really out of touch.
Okay.
But I think the worlds are merging, especially with the millennials coming up. You know, they want to be flexible. When they want to be flexible, they want to take time, and I think the technology helps us to do that.
Right. Well said. Last part of that question is to the 20-year-old that's listening to us somewhere in the world, one of these, you know, cities you're talking about that are coming up the curve in tech. What advice do you give to them if they want to get involved, if they want to be part of a tech startup? What do you tell them?
Start now. I mean, start by, you know, depending on how young you are, you know, do a lemonade stand. See what business is really like. You know, I started my daughter. She wanted to be a photographer, selling pictures online. I mean, there's so many different places you can create crafts online. You know, experience it. Go ahead and get started. There are also a lot of organizations that have youth groups. So like TIE, I don't know if you guys have TIE here. It's an international organization. It's one of the largest entrepreneur organizations. They have what they call TIE Youth. And they do youth projects and youth pitches and all kinds of, so go ahead and get involved, get engaged, and experience it to see if that's really what you want to do and what your passion and your focus might be on. Don't wait.
Don't wait. Very good advice. Sandy, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for the insights. If people want to find out more about this report or get the report or contact you or you use your cloud services, how do they do it?
Well, you can always go to IBM.com. We have a whole feature today on cloud. If you do hashtag IBMBTT, and request the report, we'll send you the link. You can get the report for free. We have a bunch of digital assets on it, so you can use them all digitally. And then if you have a question for me, my Twitter ID is Sandy_Carter, and I'd love to hear from everybody. Tweet away. Tweet, tweet, tweet.
Tweet, tweet, tweet.
Fantastic. This is a great show. It's such a nice change for us to get, you know, a different perspective and,
Absolutely.
You know, someone that's not, you know, in the trenches here trying to create something, but someone on a different level. So, Sandy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's nice to have a Texan in the house.
There we go.
Hook 'em horns.
If you're watching us live, thanks for doing that. If you want to listen to us, we're on iTunes, so you can click on that and you can have it downloaded free and walk around with that. Somebody said he was mowing the lawn the other day and was listening to one of our shows. So that's all good, and we would love any guest suggestions, so keep that coming. If you want to send us an email, it's hello@siliconreal.com. And that's it, right? What can I say? Our tagline is, it's about the people. Sandy, you're one of them. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Let's go get some coffee now.
There we go.
There you go. All right. All the best.
Thanks.
Microsoft as a company, we are, we're very interested in growing diversity, and we have a lot of programs around girls in tech. We're working with the teams kind of in the trenches to help them, get from whatever point they are at seed stage to, to launch or to the next stage of their development. This is an exciting time. I mean, there's so much going on in the tech scene in London. One of the great things about Microsoft is that every big company in the world is a is a customer of ours, basically. And so one thing that startups need as much, if not more than they need money, they need customers.